So in that way, you perform all your duties to the society. At the same time, you are like this beautiful lotus leaf, which never gets wet. Ultimately, whatever we do in life, we must be happy. You see, this is a very basic principle with which the whole startup and the entrepreneurship ecosystem is working on. Every startup guy who is trying to solve a problem is doing it because that makes him happy. But the basic teachings of ISCON is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. The founder of ISCON is a Calcutta boy. In his own words, he says, I am a Calcutta boy.
It took Indian spiritualism to come down and a restless USA.
Spirituality is when you know how to deal with yourself. And the importance of the spiritual quotient, people realized when COVID hit us. See, even the Bhagavad Gita, which is the basic canonical text of Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma, was delivered in a war zone, not on top of Mount Kailash.
Hi, this is Pratim Ranjan Bose. You are watching Podcast with Pratim. My today's guest is interesting. Normally, we talk about finance, economy, geopolitics. I don't know whether I should call it a serious issue or not. Generally, I'm looked at as a rugged old man talking about some very complex issues. But my today's guest is someone, he's what we call a sadhu. The difference is, I knew this sadhu when he was not a sadhu. And to me, he is quite a kid. He was a management executive, pretty important one in a Tata Group company when I came to know, when I was introduced to him. Yeah, I knew that he was spiritual, but who knew that this boy will be a sadhu? He will leave everything else, the fat corporate salaries behind, and become a sadhu. So my today's guest is Aradhya Bhagavan Das. I'm not taking his old name. Welcome to you. So I'm sorry, but I cannot call you Swamiji as of now.
You shouldn't.
My first question to you. What actually happened? We read about it, about people, Swami Vivekananda, etc., etc. So what happened? Why did you give up everything else? I mean, is it like someone ditched you in love? What happened?
Definitely, it's not a love issue. Well, I was born into a very Gaudiya Vaishnava line family. My family belongs to the line of Ganga Mata Goswamini. If you go to Puri, just beside Jagannath Puri temple, there is Sweta Ganga, and just beside that is Ganga Mata Goswamini Mat. She is one of the foremost lady acharyas of the strictly male Gaudiya Vaishnava line. And I belong to that same family. I was born on Radha Ashtami Day. So naturally, I was born with a very spiritual bent of mind. When we were introduced, even then you noticed that, I had this spiritual kind of a background and liking and inkling. So I have been in the spiritual study mode along with my regular life from a very long time. I've been with ISCON for about 15 years now. I got initiated in ISCON. I studied a lot of text and Bhakti Shastri under ISCON. While doing all of that, something that struck me the most, rather two things struck me the most. One was where Swami Vivekananda says that if somebody who has left everything, I'm not quoting him here, I'm just paraphrasing. He says that if somebody has left everything and gone away to the jungles, then he has missed the way. He says if somebody has stopped all spiritual practices and completely immersed himself in work, calling work as worship, which is again one of his quotes, even then he has missed his way. The only one who can stay in the regular life at the same time can inject in the divine consciousness in his everyday work is the one who has got the way. That is a very important factor, which was like a guiding principle for me. And this particular principle comes out in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's studies, who is hailed largely as a social reformer in India. I mean, people who study Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a academic, I mean, from an academic perspective, they all call him the social reformer, right? So from a social reformer perspective also, the most important teaching that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given is the word called Yukta Vairagya. So this Yukta Vairagya also enlists the same principle that Swami Vivekananda had said after so many years, where you are working, you are in hardcore material life, you are completely yukta with it. At the same time, there is Vairagya. So Vairagya is renunciation, where you are not completely controlled by material. So in that way, you perform all your duties to the society. At the same time, you are like this beautiful lotus leaf, which never gets wet. Water falls on the lotus leaf, the water will just pass on into the pond or the river or whatever. It will not get wet. So this is the guiding principle with which I have made this decision, made this choice, and I'm happy about it.
You were always a smiling boy. But I wonder, and I'm asking this with a lot of self-criticism, how could you sadhus, smile so much? I am known as someone who doesn't smile.
See, the most important thing is ultimately, whatever we do in life, we must be happy. You see, this is a very basic principle with which the whole startup and the entrepreneurship ecosystem is working on. What is the fuel with which whole of startup ecosystem is working? Every startup guy who is trying to solve a problem is doing it because that makes him happy. Solving other people's problem makes him happy. Every startup, this is my personal belief, okay? I mean, I don't have statistics to back it up, but I personally, sincerely believe it, that if somebody who gets into this startup game just because he wants to become a billionaire, just because he wants to become famous, just because it's an easy way to become a director in a company, they will mostly fail out because their purpose is misplaced. So for us, we are like social entrepreneurs. We also help people. So whatever we do, if we are not happy, then we cannot sustain.
That's a very nice way to put it. Yes, there has to be a purpose. You cannot just be driven by some, that is what keeps me going. Always a purpose in mind, and you are chasing your dreams. But it is not about a particular salary, a particular position. It is about a particular achievement. You want to achieve certain heights. Yes. Having said that, I was, when you were talking about people who haven't explored spiritualism and who have left everything for spiritualism. So I don't know where I do belong, but I'm very curious to ask. You said about Gaudiya Vaishnava sect where you got attracted, you were immersed in that particular philosophy. So why ISCON? Now, I'm saying this with the perspective that having grown up in West Bengal, we saw ISCON as something, it's something not so regular, some foreigners, etc. But I realized their importance when I was in USA and even in places like Hawaii, so the famous Waikiki Beach. So I saw that the ISCON sadhus are there. And then I saw the ISCON distributing food in Hawaii University, etc. So then I realized that this is a truly global organization, and I read about Prabhupada, etc. So why ISKCON? This is my question to you, more because many people that we see are, sort of initiated in Ramakrishna Mission and some other places. Why ISKCON?
Mhm. Well, to answer that question, there are a couple of reasons. The first and foremost reason, the most important reason in this case, would be the fact that I come from a Gaudiya Vaishnava family lineage. So naturally, that Vaishnava lineage had to, I think it played a very important role subconsciously to me. I have interacted a lot with Ramakrishna Mission Maharajas and sadhus. I have interacted a lot with Bharat Sevashram sadhus. I have interacted a lot with Mother Teresa's foundation. In fact, I did a lot of charity work in Mother Teresa's mission. I studied in a Christian missionary school. So naturally, I had a huge number of years working with Roman Catholics. So I have interacted with different level of people who are on their spiritual journey. Let's put it this way. They're all on their journey towards a spiritual realization. Now, coming to the fact that why I chose ISKCON particularly, the answer in one word would be Srila Prabhupada. In Calcutta, the place where I was born and where I have lived my childhood and everything. Right now I'm in Mayapur, but my childhood and everything in Calcutta, this place where I had lived basically, that is about 1 kilometer away from Srila Prabhupada's birthplace, which is near Tollygunge. Many of you will know it as Bhavani Cinema. Okay, so that is where Srila Prabhupada was born. ISKCON as an organization, you have very correctly put out that largely it is perceived to be an Western organization, which is not wrong in one perspective because ISKCON was incorporated first time in New York. So in that sense, it is a foreign organization. But the basic teachings of ISKCON is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings. The founder of ISKCON is a Calcutta boy. In his own words, he says, I am a Calcutta boy. This is what he calls himself. I'm a Calcutta boy. And ISKCON's founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, my Param Gurudev, he took initiation from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is a towering personality. If anybody, I will urge everybody seeing this podcast to once in your life, do a Google search of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. This man, he's something that, world should have celebrated. World should have celebrated. He was studying in Sanskrit college. He he started his own line of Surya Siddhanta, and he relinquished his complete degree education and everything because he had a mismatch and argument with his professors. And then he went on to become the Rajguru of the king of Tripura at that time, or the crown prince of Tripura at that time. This Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he is the person who founded the Gauriya Mutt, which you will see in Bagh Bazar Gauriya Mutt now.
Of course.
The Bagh Bazar Gauriya Mutt. He is the one who founded that mark. Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose came to meet him. Sarojini Naidu came to meet him. He was a regular with Rabindranath Tagore. His father was classmates with half of the Tagore family. Right? And when Srila Prabhupada, my Param Gurudev, met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, his guru, the first interaction that they had in Calcutta was very simple. Saraswati Thakur told Prabhupada, you are an English medium trained boy. Why don't, because he was studying in Scottish Church that time, Prabhupada. So he said, why don't you go and spread this mission across the world? Sitting in Calcutta, he's saying, spread Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission in English across the world. Look at the vision. Let's not get into the theology and philosophy and religion part of it. Look at the vision. Sitting in Calcutta, he's saying, go across the world, go to every town and village in the world and spread this message of love of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In 1922, this occurred.
I have a question here. Sorry.
Yes.
I have a question here. Not question, actually. We were just born when the hippie movement was on. And later, I read from, when I read, I realized that Prabhupada had a huge role. He motivated a whole generation, which is called the hungry generation. And
Yes.
that is how they all came to India and all this London to Goa bus service and so many things. So it took Indian spiritualism to come down and a restless USA, a whole generation.
Yes.
Today, some 50, 60 years later, when we are on course to development, we aim to be a developed country by 2047. Even if we don't become developed by 2047, we will surely be developed by 2057, 67 sometime. But it's within the foreseeable future because we are progressing very fast. That said, we see loads of naturally as you move into modern economy, so the uncertainties grow. You are talking about the startups. Imagine the kind of, you have lived in corporate environment, so the daily grind, the pressure, the pressure in which you live in. Actually, we all are. So we live in a pressure cooker situation.
Yes, we do.
And we are witnessing various sorts of, in this transition, we are witnessing many restlessness in the society. So how do you believe that we can take some lesson from our own past, our own experience in coming down a whole generation in USA? How these things can be replicated? Where is the importance of this spiritualism?
See, let me put it this way. At one point of time in history, okay, the people were given jobs based on their physical quotient. PQ was a very important factor because people were living and struggling all their lives. Somebody was fighting wars, somebody was going out hunting, somebody was creating sculptures, but the PQ was a very important factor. Right?
Right.
And then came IQ. We have lived through IQ. Right? And then came EQ. So once PQ came into IQ, that okay. I mean, PQ was where you have brute force. IQ is when you have brains. You're not just using brute force. Now, when you have brains, now 5 people coming in with brains, if you don't have EQ, you cannot work in a team. Right? So that's when EQ came up. We have lived through the generation of EQ. Then the concept that came up is SQ. The first time this word SQ came up was in a Harvard research paper. I'm forgetting the name of the person who did this research. It was a couple, husband-wife couple, who quoted this, who used this word SQ. It was in the year 2000. The word SQ came up. Now, this spiritual quotient Now, apparently, hearing the word spirituality, we think, in our mind, we imagine you go into the Himalayas and you go like, oh, no, it is not that. Spirituality is when you know how to deal with yourself. And the importance of the spiritual quotient, people realized when COVID hit us.
Who you are.
Because we were all into lockdown. And half the people started developing psychological problems because they were all locked up in a house, in a room. They're not able to function. Even now, I see so many people who will say that if I don't go to office, I'll go crazy. Why? Because you don't know how to deal with yourself. When I say deal with yourself, what does it mean? It means your mind. You see, in the Bhagavad Gita, even Arjuna is saying the same thing to Krishna, that I can control the wind with my bow and arrow, but I cannot control my mind. It is the same mind that people were finding difficult to control. So many things were coming into our mind. People were just going crazy. That's when human beings realized SQ after 2 decades of it first being quoted. So now, for a team to perform well, it means that not only he has to have intelligence, he also has to have an emotional quotient to be able to understand the person he's talking with, as well as he should be able to deal with himself. And this himself comes from the varied ranges of spiritual practices that have been practiced across the world, in which India has been undoubtedly a leader. Nobody can doubt that. Whether you go to US, you go to Oxford, you go to even Hong Kong, nobody can doubt that India has been the leader in this. So that is where Indian spiritualism, or rather, India's vast repository of ancient knowledge comes into play.
So you are saying that we have to reinvent ourselves, right? And I often think that
I would not use the word reinvent. I will say we have to rediscover. There's a stark difference between invention and discovery, right? Invention is something that did not exist. Discovery is, it existed, but you didn't know, right? So we need to rediscover ourselves.
I often think, though I'm not religious, but when I read about Chaitanya and the kind of classless societies or less inequality, this kind of social issues that we talk about, do you think that enough has been done to propagate his ideas?
See, if you ask me, can we do more? Yes, we can do more. We can do much, much more. Like I was saying, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, one of his visions, he actually had a conference with Rabindranath Tagore, and Rabindranath Tagore actually wrote a letter of recommendation for one of his young sadhus who later became Bon Maharaj. He was Bon Maharaj then as well. He was a young boy born into a very educated family. His father was a professor in Calcutta University. He was sent to England in the 1920s to have an audience with the king. He actually had an audience with the king. He gave lectures in Oxford, he gave lectures in Cambridge and stuff like that. So there is a huge gamut of things that you can do. So yes, is there a lot more things we can do? Yes, we can do a lot more things with it. But what is very important and what hurts me the most is very few people actually study his line of Vedanta. I mean, when we talk about Vedanta, we are largely researching on the Vedanta or the Advaita Vedanta, which is Shankaracharya's line of Vedanta. And that also is the line of Vedanta that Ramakrishna Mission is following. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's line of Vedanta is a very distinctive and well-recognized school of Vedanta known as the Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. So this line of Vedanta is something which is very important for us as well, because this line speaks about this word Yukta Vairagya, which I spoke about. And this Yukta Vairagya, I think, is a very, very important concept in today's world, because if you walk into, I was in Starmark the other day in Calcutta in South City Mall. I went into the self-help section, okay? And I am seeing thousands of books, okay? Which are things like the Gita for the CEO, the spiritual CEO, the CEO's mind, and things like that. Ultimately, all these things are spirituality. Even if you don't get into, let's say, the Indian understanding of spirituality, even if you have something called, there is a very famous bestseller by Penguin called The Quiet, which is basically about solitude. Even that is a spiritual book in my understanding. It may not be a particular line of Vedanta, but it is a spiritual book because it is all towards understanding yourself.
I agree. One thing has definitely happened is that, for example, we have seen a whole lot of meditation musics. It is available in YouTube, and people, it keeps on. For example, the Om chanting. I have seen it in many corporate executives keeping it running while working. So people are investing or trying to refocus or taking attention of their inner self because as the pressure is growing.
Yes.
Yoga is part of that, a meditation part. But one curious outcome, and that is my last question to you, is that you partly answered it in the beginning, is in the good old days, a sadhu was a distant concept to us. Someone who is not, someone who cannot be reached out to. You can see him, you can respect him, but he is not one of you, right? Today, we are witnessing a whole lot of sadhus are coming up, and they are outstanding speakers, motivational speakers. But motivation or not, they are outstanding speakers. They are drawing audience. People just glue to their whenever they speak. So what is this transition all about? How it is taking shape? Is it the business of spiritualism? Sorry for asking this.
See, there are a couple of factors to it. Let's come down to a very basic thing. You are somebody who works into economics and geopolitics and stuff like that, right? The basic of economics says that there has to be a demand for a supply to work, right? So yes, there is a huge demand. And what is this demand about? The demand is about dealing with the self, right? The demand is about dealing with the self. Now, people deal with self in very different ways, Somebody takes a hiatus, takes a sabbatical and goes out on a hike for a hiking trail. Somebody joins a weekend yoga session. Somebody reads Bhagavad Gita every day, one shloka a day. Somebody does meditation for half an hour in the morning. Somebody joins a music studio, a dance studio and dances and takes things off his body. Somebody joins a gym to sweat it off, right? And then there are somebody like, in my mind, one of the biggest spiritual sadhus of the modern age is Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam and Narayana Murthy.
Of course.
And Narayana Murthy. The reason I say this is because their way of dealing with their mental issues was to work more. So when Narayan Murthy actually made that very controversial comment of, working 90 hours a week or whatever he said, 70 or 90 hours a week, it has to be understood that for him, it is his regular life. He cannot live without doing that work. That is his sadhana. So for him, it is natural. People who were creating all this sort of noise, for them, that office is not their life. So that's why they were having issues with 70-hour, 90-hour work weeks, right? So that was where the disconnect was. Now, coming back to your question of this commercialization, there has definitely been a commercialization that has happened, because we need to understand that, see, we are living in the world of consumerism. We are living in the world of consumerism, right? So when you are living in the world of consumerism, there is consumerism that will trickle down, right? The ghee will not always be pure. There'll always be impure ghee. There's always going to be a difference between a 2,000 rupees per kilo ghee and a 200 rupees per kilo ghee. But there are takers.
No, I fully appreciate it. I fully appreciate it. It's we have got so many outstanding speakers, and this is a completely different line than we have heard before or we were used to. So we were exposed to a whole new world of thinking. All it is not really exposed. I mean, the books existed, sadhus did exist, but only the common people, they were not reaching out to common.
The interaction point did not exist much. That is what you are
It
saying.
was far less. It was for an exclusive society. So today, thanks to YouTube, you are watching out as they will watch you.
Let me put it this way before we finish. Sorry to interrupt you. Just one thing I want to say. Rather, two things I just want to say. I'll just take 5 minutes. One is, we must remember that Steve Jobs